Let's see. Trying to share what I've got on my screen. I think is that working? You guys are still seeing me, aren't you?
Yes, we can see you and your screen.
Okay, great. So, my name is
Shannon, I may have to mute everyone. If I do that, I'll unmute you very quickly.
Okay.
All right. Can you speak, Shannon?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes.
Excellent. So my name is Shannon Robnett. I own a handful of companies, but it's a pleasure to be here this morning or this afternoon, whichever time zone you're in. Speaking to COVID, it's funny. I knew I had this presentation, and I've been locked down so often. I actually brushed my teeth and put on cologne so you could all experience that. But that's kind of how the world works these days. Is we're doing things a lot differently, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you in this Zoom meeting. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. But I want to start right now real quick with a couple of things to back up what Daniel just read about my particular market in Boise, Idaho, which is about 8 hours by car away from you guys. Last year we had the same things happen to us that everybody had, but we were one of those little towns that everybody ran to. So we had an 18.1% year over year appreciation in our median sales price in Ada County. We sold 887 homes. That was up 2.5% from last year. The average market time was 18 days on the market in Idaho. That's a 55% decrease in our market. That's huge. We had carried an inventory throughout the year of about 408 units, which was, again, a 75% decrease. Most of that was brought on by COVID-related showing instances or problems with how we were going to do that, builders slowing down, things like that. And in Canyon County, which is the sister county to Ada County, we saw a 23% increase in price. Median price in Canyon County is only $325,000 for the median home price. And we saw an 80% reduction in inventory while seeing a 23% increase in home sales. So that kind of ties in with what Daniel said about who I am as far as where I come from. So you know that 8 hours away, there's this crazy little town crazy little valley called the Treasure Valley. And these are the stats with that. So with that, we'll go ahead and start my presentation, and I'll try and keep pace with that. My name is Shannon Robnett. I am honored to be with you guys today. I have come from a background in the market of real estate and finances in the fact that I've been in this business my whole life. My parents moved from California when I was about 8, and we moved to Idaho. And at that time, my dad was a builder, had a contractor's license in California, and my mom got a real estate license, which made her the third generation in her family to have that real estate license. And that kind of put us on the track where my background come from. But today what we're going to talk about is the difference between value add and ground up multifamily development. And I'm going to try and highlight a little bit of what people consider to be the market and how things work in that market, so that we can just kind of talk about what I know versus what the rest of the world knows as far as the difference between the value add product and the multifamily ground up, and why there is a difference and what that difference would look like to the investor. So again, a little bit about my background. I am a person that's been in real estate for all of my life. I've done over $200 million of personal transactions. That's where I'm either the buyer or the seller. That's not stuff that I built for other people. That's not projects that have been completed on public works or anything like that. That's just my personal transactions year to date. I've got 40 years in Idaho, as I said, 25 years as a builder and developer on my own that I've been working in the market, which really gives me a lot of insight as to what my market does. I've seen the major roads in our area when they were 2-lane roads, and they've grown to be what they are today. And so I've really got a background, and I'm not trying to do things in Tallahassee and then Toledo and Toronto or wherever else, whatever else starts with a T that you want to do next. I've really focused my whole building career in Idaho, and I tend to stay there because I know my backyard and I like working in my own backyard. I'm a second generation realtor, as I said. I also had my real estate license for a while, so that's fourth generation there. My son, who's 24 years old, is also in the real estate game, and so we've got 5 generations of real estate in our family. To say that we know a little bit about real estate would be kind of an understatement. It's what we talk about at Thanksgiving. So, but I've had the opportunity to build a litany of projects coming from the multifamily sector, fire stations, schools, hospitals, police stations, medical office buildings. I've done just about everything that you can do except for heavy highway work. And so with that, I'm able to bring that expertise. But where I really honed my skills was becoming a design build contractor, where I had customers who had problems that they didn't know how to solve. They knew that they wanted a new building. They knew that they'd outgrown their current facility. They knew they wanted to move across town, but they didn't know what to do next. And so we began with the lot selection. We began with where you're going to build your building, what you're going to do from there. And we designed it backwards to fit the location and the cost all together with what the client needed. So we didn't just start with come in and you bid the job and then you get the job and you work. We on the design build. And I was able to take that model and really kind of hone that into my own way of thinking and my own journey down the development road and my own journey down the investment road. And so with that, I created a myriad of companies because I kind of needed to be able to handle quite a few things. If I'm going to work in an area like Boise, Idaho, Meridian, Nampa, Eagle, which are all considered the Treasure Valley, the MSA there is about 712,000. But in order to do that, I needed to have several companies because I'm a little bit of a control freak, but I really wanted to be able to understand every aspect of my business, be able to offer my customers something that was best for them on the customer service level from their point of view, not necessarily profit driven, but at the end, knowing that our results would speak for themselves and we would be able to show that at the end of the day, we were working with our customers' best interest in mind. So I created Shannon Robnett Industries, which is the parent company of all the other companies that we have here. Then I created Vertical Equity. Vertical Equity is a fundraising arm because the Kardashians are the first one to tell you can't do anything without money. But we needed to fund these projects. We needed to raise capital. We needed to have an entity that worked in that fundraising field. And so I brought on several great key players on that. We built an internet presence and we've done those kinds of things with my Vertical Equity. And then we brought on, I've always had Phoenix Commercial Construction, which is the construction branch that works for the development, works for the general partners and the LPs. And that's a company that I have had for quite some time. And then there's executive property management, because the reality is I needed to have a property management company that was more focused on the bottom line for the developer, for the investor, than it was on its own profits. And so to give you an example, we had an opportunity to bring cable and internet to one of our projects. We brought that on. It produced a $35 a door additional revenue on 180 doors in a 4.75 cap market. It added over $2 million to our bottom line. A typical property management company would probably have resold the internet and kept the profits themselves, but I was able to do that with my own company and pass that profit along to the development, and that was a major boom and a major win for my partners and I. So, guys, what we've seen and what Daniel alluded to in the beginning is that construction and development is on the rise. The market is going crazy right now, and a lot of that has to do with what we're seeing in major areas and what is being called the flee to suburbia, right? And we're seeing things change. I've been working remotely on and off for a couple of years in a lot of situations, but now where we've really had COVID change the way the workflow happens and dictated on a national level to where employers have to accept it, we've seen a lot of things that are changing. And in that marketplace, we've seen a lot of change happen as far as just how things are being built and where things are being built. So we're starting to see a lot of different things happen in how we do things. And we're starting to see some of the old floor plans and the old ways that we used to do things. They don't have a home office or a work from home center, or they aren't wired with Wi-Fi design throughout the complex. And so those are some of the things that new projects do that we can bring along. But let's start by talking about the value add project and how that typically happens. You know, as a general partner or a GP or a sponsor, as we're called, you know, we've all developed the relationships with the real estate world around us, and we tend to be waiting by the phone, or the value add guys are waiting by the phone for the realtor to call. And when that realtor calls, they grab the phone and they say, yeah, we heard about that apartment complex down the road. It's come available. Let's hurry up and put our offer in. And it's really kind of a frantic time for everybody because they don't know when it's going to happen. I refer to that as the havoc stage, right? All of a sudden we have an apartment complex in play. It's the Tropicana down the road. We love it. We want to redo it. We want to rebrand it, but we've got to fundraise for it. We've got to write the legal docs on it. We've got to underwrite it. We've got to change how things are written. We've got to change how we're going to project things. We've got to get our inspections, and then we've got to get our financing, and we've got to close. All of those things happen as you buy the building, and that typically happens in a 60 to 90-day period. That's why I call it the havoc stage. But then because it was the Tropicana and you had all these visions for it, you're going to extend your CapEx, and you're going to spend usually between 5 and 20% of the actual purchase price putting in new flooring and repainting it. And it's going to change the name from the Tropicana to the Three Palms, and you're going to redo the swimming pool. And with all of those things, you're going to be able to force that appreciation that everybody's looking for, and you're going to get that extra $100 a door as you re-rent and bring those things on. And then you get to that area in the game where the 8% pref is being doled out. It gets caught up. The cash on cash is there. And now we get a write-off into the sunset for the next 48 months or so, collecting those dividend checks, which is the reason that 3/4 of the people got involved in the deal. The other 25% of the people got involved in the deal for this last part, when you sell it. They want that last piece. They want that appreciation between the price you paid and the price you got at the end. That's the 18% or 22% IRR that we all get at the end. And that's how we all understand the typical value add deal as far as what happens with what's going on there. See, my slides look like they got a little bit out of order there. So we're gonna go with this. So then we've got the ground up value add, and this is what I do. So I'm driving down the road. I see a piece of property that I like. I make the phone call to the realtor. The realtor says, yeah, we've got that piece of property on the market. It's in the county. It's got to be rezoned. It's got to have all these things to it. And it's going to take some time, but we know that. And so we'd like to get you to give us an offer on that. So I understand that. I look at that. I kind of go to the route of mulling that over. And then I realize that I need to make my offer. I like the ground. So now I go into the no havoc stage, and I start in with the process of looking at what my timeline looks like, how things are shaping up with the company, how I can fit this into my schedule. And I begin to work on that process, and I begin to go through my due diligence. And so I get a third party involved for my soil studies, for my engineering. I go through the process of getting an appraisal. The independent third party goes out and values apartment complexes surrounding me. They tell me what it's worth, and I go ahead and I agree to the price, and I buy the land after I get it fully entitled. Then I go through the building process. We're currently in process on a couple of places, a couple of complexes, and that takes anywhere from 9 to 18 months, depending on the size. And that's where we create the real value. We nail the sticks and stones together. We put that together. We spend our time and our effort expending all those dollars. And at the end of that time, we have created that value. And when we open our doors, we invite the tenants in. The tenants come in, they pay the rent. And as we all know, we stabilize that transaction, and we know exactly where we're at. And if you're looking at these numbers, you're looking at it going, well, what's the deal here? Well, I just finished a project, or I'm in mid-course in a project that we spent $5.5 million to get it built. It will be worth $6.5 million when we're done. And this was told to me by an independent third-party appraiser, so I knew exactly what I was up against. So in that 18-month period of time, which is really going to turn into about 9-month period of time, we're going to produce a 22 to 35% IRR, because at the time that we're done with the project, we're going to stabilize it. And as soon as the units are stabilized, we're going to transact on it, and we're going to sell that to another deserving family that wants to just sit there for the cash flow. Because one of the things that I've found in my experience is that there are really two types of investors. There's those that want the appreciation because they want to be able to sit there and deploy their pile of capital at some point down the road. But right now, that pile of capital is fairly small. Then there's the other ones like my father who've come to the end of life's road. They can't afford to gamble that capital anymore. And so they want a stabilized asset, and they're willing to wait for that. And see, when you typically do a value add, you're trying to combine those two people into one group. And the guys that want the growth are excited when they buy it. They're excited when you rebrand it. They're excited when you force the appreciation. But then they tend to fall asleep during the next 3 to 6 months or 30 months or 40 months while that thing continues to spit off 6 and 7% capital, because that's not really what they're looking for. They're looking to get in, make some money, get their money back, and go to the next operation. When that is your goal, having your capital tied up for 5 to 7 to 10 years isn't really ideal. And so this is where I've looked at that and I've said, hey, let's take those two models apart and let's have the appreciation and the growth happen in one model, and let's have the stabilization happen in another model. So the stabilized asset is now buying a brand new asset. They're buying it at a really fantastic price. They also know that they're not going to be fixing toilets. They're not going to be repairing sewer lines. The parking lot's in great shape. By the way, they've still got a warranty because it's brand new, and the roof is new. So they're not going to have all of that kind of stuff going on. So they're looking to acquire that stabilized asset. And when they do that, they're simply sitting there clipping a coupon, waiting for the next one to come in. And on a quarterly basis, they're paid out a projected amount of cash based on how we're able to raise rents, based on how the market performs. And this process is repeated for 5 to 10 years. So people like my dad aren't sitting there going, I'm really nervous because we've expended our extra capital. We've spent all this money. We've done all these other things. I'm waiting for this point where I can take the depreciation, I can get those tax advantages, and I can just get my stinking check. Well, that's where I've come in and I've tried to look at how to take those two apart and put those in separate categories and offer those to the same groups that are looking for the right things at the right time. And that whole model, while it's growing, is 3 to 4% appreciation. So it's beating inflation, especially if you're able to lock in with today's rates. And at the end of 10 years, when the asset is starting to show some wear, and we've juiced all the cash on cash out of it that we're looking for, usually in that 7 to 9% range. And now we're looking at it going, hey, this one's going to need a coat of paint. This one's ready to be passed on and ready to find a new family. Then we're able to sell that project and move on to the next. And so we're able to really kind of separate those two, and we're able to transact the way we like to transact with our clients and be able to understand each individual party and each individual partner so that we can be where we need to be for everybody involved. So the real difference is, instead of being in that one size fits all with the value add, we're able to create that value in and of who we are. And we're able to do that with our group of investors who we think want what we want. And they've talked to us about it and they understand, I like the growth model. I like the cash flow model. And we're able to really make sure that we're able to get there with who we're working with so that we're able to meet their needs and get that stuff to happen. So with that, I don't know if there's a question and answer session here, Daniel, or how we want to do this, but that's kind of the presentation that I have about the difference between development and value add. And so with that, I'll open up to questions and we can kind of go from there.
Okay. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat room and I'll read them off. Shannon, just to kick it off, I know that you do a lot of row houses, and you also mentioned construction of other types of buildings, office buildings. You mentioned a fire station. How does the analysis or the deal come together differently, particularly for row houses? I'm interested in that, and I think people in our group would be too.
Well, the reality is the row houses that we do are townhomes, and so they are built just a larger unit apartment with an independent attached garage. And so that you don't have a neighbor top to bottom. You've got a neighbor side to side, but they are still a rental project.
Okay. And does that change for a commercial style property, like an office, dentist, fire station?
We do a lot of flex industrial space. In fact, we've got 3 projects right now that are opportunity zone, industrial space, flex industrial spaces, and we have tenants in those. And those are really excellent because you're not, property taxes are going up. You're not responsible for that. If we have another snowmageddon, things are covered by that, and then they're reimbursed to the tenants. And so when we get into the industrial, I personally really like the industrial because it's, people aren't looking at it going, well, this is my home. They're looking at it like this is my business. And back in 2001, I built my very first one for myself, and I still have several of the tenants. 2001, one makes gelato ice cream, but where else are you going to make gelato ice cream? I mean, you have a little mom and pop operation. You're not going to put an 1,800 square foot kitchen in your garage. And so we have those kinds of deals, and those are kind of the same thing because while they're next to each other, and they're all independently tenantized and going from there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see a few questions roll in the chat, and the first one, if you're sending the questions to me over a private channel, I would just request you send them publicly so everybody can see them. But we have one question here, and some of these questions are this one is for a VA home loan ground up fourplex. So how feasible is it to use VA home loans to build ground up fourplexes? I'm aware that you can get a loan for up to a fourplex with this type. I don't know if that's not exactly the type you do, but maybe you can comment on it.
Make stuff up with the best of them,
Okay.
but the reality is, at the end of the day, that would be something I would ask a lending professional, because I don't do fourplex product because of the economies of scale that happen with management, with leasing, with even construction, with land, everything about it. We find so much more value in doing larger projects.
Mm-hmm. All right. Young Ms. wants to know, what's the eviction policy in Boise during the pandemic?
So we have had a similar eviction policy to most, but here's the other thing about having a property management company that you own. We had a couple of things going on. One, you could have stayed in there, but there is so little vacancy. I think we're running about a 1.7% vacancy currently was the last stat I had. And people know that if they get kicked out, once this is over, the likelihood of finding another place isn't going to be really good at all. And so people have been encouraged because of the predicament that they're in to continue paying. But because we own the property management company, we actually spent the time to educate our tenants as to what we could really do for them and how they could really help themselves. We had about 6 people that ran into trouble. We were able to get them some public assistance through different channels that did not require what Oregon requires, but they were able to get public assistance, and we helped them process. Is it okay? Can you hear me?
I think it is now. I wasn't sure if it was me or you that cut out.
I think it was just you, Daniel.
Okay.
We heard it fine.
Okay. So we were able to, because that was in the best interest of the owner, we were able to help them, and we spent a bit of time. It was definitely not free for us, but the result was we were able to keep our units at the same rate of pay as we did last year, as far as 97.3%, I believe, is where we wound up with on payment.
All right. And Glenn is asking, do you take the structure and sell from one legal entity to the other that you're managing, that you're managing both investor pools with both entities, where that the flow is going to occur at the point of completion of the development, and then run rate cash flow starts?
That's correct.
Okay.
So
sorry for reading the question poorly.
Yep. No, I understand exactly what you're asking there. We do. And so to give you an example of a project that we're doing now, That project had an appraisal of $6.3 million. And we have seen the market and where the market's at, and where we're actually transferring that from one entity to the other is at $6.75 million. And so we're above our projections for our investors on the sell side, and we're in a good place to provide a bit of a cushion, a nice purchase price for the investors on the other side. And most of that, Daniel, has to do with the fact that we are not charging absorbent transaction fees on both sides, because we are really kind of trying to facilitate the transfer from one entity to another. So we're able to help those that want cash flow get out of or get into the deal, while those that wanted growth, they can get out of the deal. And that makes it pretty easy and pretty reasonable for everybody to make the best deal and get the best returns.
I'll insert a question right here. During the pandemic, did you have any issues or troubles with labor shortage supplies, and how did that work out for you? What were the ups and downs?
We didn't have a problem with the labor shortage and supply during the first 6 months of the pandemic. It was really once everybody realized that we were going to have to find some sort of normalcy in there, that everybody went back to work, and we wound up realizing that because we didn't build anything for 3 months, we were that much farther behind. And so everybody, instead of starting the normal 1 or 2 that they would have started this week, they're trying to start 3 and 4 to get caught up. And so now we see the labor shortage.
All right. Andrew is asking, just scrolled off my screen. I've heard that keeping 10% contingency is a safe rule of thumb for multifamily construction. Do you find that accurate? And what do you generally find you have to spend contingency on? Which line items in your pro forma do you usually find have the most variability?
Well, see, that's the benefit of what I do, because SRI functions as the sponsor. My vertical equity functions as the fundraiser, but Phoenix Commercial Construction functions as the builder. And the reality is, when I do my deals, I personally guarantee the construction contract as well as all financing and all loans. So the contingency comes out of my pocket, because my feeling is, if my investors are really investing in who I am and my 27-year track record, then they need to believe that if I miss something, that's not passed on to them in that regard. So I find that it's easier for me to sign a guaranteed maximum contract. In that contract, I do have a 5% contingency, because I found that in my 27 years, I'm able to be able to identify most of my contingencies, cover them, because I'm not in a typical bid situation where I've taken low bid. I'm working with subcontractors that I've got a long history with, and we're doing things the right way. I usually find that 5% covers me, and then I back that up to my investors with a guaranteed max and a personal guarantee from my own wallet.
Glenn is asking, how do the separate entities do their due diligence? Or is there an already established trust from your investors that the valuations are fair on both sides?
Well, like I said, Glenn, I don't have to do any of that stuff. I'm able to provide people with the appraisal. And so they're able to read and see. We put together our projections, but in most situations, when you're buying a value add, you can get an appraisal on what it costs for that value add, but you can't really get the appraiser to give you a price and evaluation on what that value add will be worth once the forced appreciation is done. So you've got to trust your syndicators for some of that. In my world, we go out and we get an appraisal on both sides. So we know that we have a good evaluation by a third party who I paid money to, but unlike a lobbyist, I can't influence, right? So we get those good things back to us, and then I don't have to be the one that convinces you that it's an adequate or a good deal. You can look at what somebody else that's got a college education and the backing and the credentials and everything behind that to tell you that it is appropriately priced.
All right. We don't have any other questions at this point, unless I've missed one or two. Maybe we could just open up the lines if people want to speak directly. And if not, we can close it out a little early. Or if you have something else to share, you can, Shannon.
Well, I apologize if I went a little quick, but if you guys want to talk more of a one-on-one, if you guys want to go to shannonrobnett.com, you can find there, you can find ways to connect with me, get on my calendar. Just tell me in your request that, hey, I was on the Intel call. I'd love to chat with you. Give me a little bit of an idea so I've got a heads up. But I would love to get you on my calendar and have a conversation with you and see if maybe something we've got over here in Boise, Idaho would fit with what you're looking for with your investment portfolios.
All right. And with that, I guess we will end a little bit early. Next week, we have Kenny Wolf, who will be talking about triple net leases. And then in 2 weeks, we have advertised our roundtable discussion. And I need to find some more people at Intel who would like to talk about their experience in investing. I think we have 2 people confirmed currently, but if there are others, that would be great. If not, I'm going to try and find somebody who can speak about first-time home loans. And focus a lot on that single-family market that I know a lot of you are interested in as well. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. And Shannon, thank you so much for being here and for giving us a little bit of education.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. And guys, feel free to reach out to me at shannonrobnett.com. I'd love to chat with you.
Thanks.